This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria, the editorial director of Box Office Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. Here this week, once again, with my colleagues and co-hosts Rebecca Pahle and Chad Kennerk, also from Box Office Pro. And in this week's episode, we are going to do a November preview at the movies, going over all the major wide releases coming to a theater near you in what we really hope to be a remount month for Q4 2024. Rebecca, Chad, welcome. I hope you guys had a good movie-going weekend last weekend, although with the way ticket sales shored up, I'm not sure either of you guys made it out on week 2 of Venom.
Eric and I are going to see Anora because we're catching up. I've been wanting to see Anora, and I definitely do not want to be glued in front of the TV for election night coverage because that just sounds like it would be horribly stressful. So
I've never understood that, by the way. If you want to hear like foreigners' insights into this, I feel like watching election night coverage is like lining up early to board an airplane. You're all like, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
it's going to happen. You lining up early you watching every second really isn't going to change much.
And it used to be that you could expect the results by maybe there was a straggler state coming in at 3 a.m. But nowadays, we're not even going to know. I would much rather see a movie than
go catch a movie, go to bed early. How about you, Chad? Did you see anything last week or anything this week?
I didn't, but the Denver Film Festival is going on right now, so I'm going to be catching up with some films via that.
You mentioned that you were going to RSVP to see The Brutalist, the new movie from Brady Corbett over at the film festival in Denver. I saw that in a screener here last week. Eat before you go.
Good tip.
Eat before you go. It was a 4-hour screening here. I think it was the first press screening here in New York. I'm not sure all of us had done the homework to look at that running time before. There is an intermission. But the challenge here is if you're not in a movie theater, there's no concession stand. Concession stand. So you're in a 4-hour screening. You've got maybe 15 minutes to jump out of whatever screening room in Midtown Manhattan you're in and try to fight for a cold sandwich at a Pret-a-Manger somewhere in Midtown and make it back.
Overpriced, yeah.
Yeah, not going to work. It's a tough proposition. But for movie-going audiences, the return of an intermission, not a bad deal.
I'm definitely going to see it in theaters because I definitely know if I tried to watch it at home, the movie looks great. I've heard great things, but it's one where you have to be locked in.
It's filmed in VistaVision. It sounded great. I saw it at the Dolby 88 Auditorium here in Manhattan. Definitely something to catch, but we're already going into the December preview part of the episode. We need to go back to November, guys. There's a bunch of movies coming out. It was a slow start to the month last weekend with Here coming out wide from Sony, the Robert Zemeckis movie that surprisingly didn't really get as big of a press push as I think something with Tom Hanks and Robert Zemeckis and Robin Wright could get. Yeah, that came and went. Also, putting something wide the weekend before an election where every single ad on TV is going to political ads, it's going to be really hard for you to beat that noise. Opened to 5 million, which is exactly where our forecasting panel had predicted that movie to open. But all in all, I think a disappointing start to the month of November with that release. It's going to be slow here up until November 22nd when Gladiator II and Wicked Part 1 open. So let's go through the list, starting with what's coming up this weekend. From Lionsgate, which is having one very long and slow year.
They're having a bit of a throw spaghetti at the wall year.
Yeah, it's a flavor of the week type of situation with Lionsgate this year. Now, to be fair, they've got a different team in charge there. I think it's very much a transition year for Lionsgate as they look forward to the direction they're taking. And they used this year to finally put some titles that had been baking for a while in theaters. White Bird, something like Borderlands. These are two movies that have been, I think, in the shelf for a long time. They finally got pushed out. A couple of other movies that maybe should have performed better that didn't. This might be the outlier here to really break the cold streak of Lionsgate at the box office. And I say that in context. It's going to be the best Christmas pageant ever. A bold statement. Post-election, early November audience is excited to see a Christmas-themed movie. We'll see. But right now we're dealing with a big range here between $6 to $12 million on opening weekend, because I know there were some well-attended early screenings of this film leading up to the release.
And I think a key thing for this particular film, and something that maybe kind of does some explaining for why the tracking has been going up. This is a film that is produced under the banner of the Irwin brothers, who have had a years-long relationship with Lionsgate, releasing faith-based titles. These feel-good faith-based films, like, don't count them out. They're not going to be $100 million earners, but I think this could be an important part of the slate before we get to Gladiator Wicked Day.
I remember the book growing up really fondly, and so I think you might get some nostalgia in with that. Also, Dallas Jenkins is the director behind that Chosen series.
Yeah.
So
I mean, when
think
you
that
talk about people
also-
who can do marketing and grassroots and outreach.
Right.
And I think this movie can extend a strong run, not only in its opening weekend, but also into next week. That is not really packed in terms of movie going options. We'll be going over that in a little bit, but it's one of the reasons why we have such a wide opening weekend range. It can overperform in context to where Lionsgate has performed this year. But regardless of the result, I do expect a pretty strong hold in weekend two. I think, as Chad notes, this sort of audience for this type of movie isn't necessarily an opening weekend audience.
They're definitely not a pre-sales audience. Like, they're
And
an
definitely
audience
not a
they
pre-sales
fly
audience,
under the
yeah.
radar kind of
Absolutely.
situation.
Now, talking about core audiences, the counter-programmer we have this week with horror star Hugh Grant. A little bit of a twist here. Hugh Grant, who you might remember from 1990s era romantic comedies, is back.
And Lair of the White Worm.
I don't know that title. You came up with a deep cut. What is this?
It is a Lovecraft adaptation. It's really good. It's fun, and it's Ken Russell, right, Chad?
No, I don't know this one.
Oh,
So-
No one's
Lair
heard
of
of
the
this
White
movie,
Worm.
Rebecca.
He did in the 90s a Lovecraft adaptation about a giant white worm who disguises herself as a human woman who wears excellent clothes. It's good. It's a very good, like, English folk horror.
Okay.
And
adding that
anyway,
to my list.
I just love that.
That's good. I'm glad you bring that up, because I was about to just write off Hugh Grant as just doing one type of movie forever, but clearly he's got a little bit of an interest in the horror genre.
I'm just really excited to see this sort of, I don't know, a Christmas movie and a movie called Heretic on the same weekend. It's kind of a weird
the
little
title, yeah.
Barbenheimer situation.
Yeah, there
Mini
you go. That's
Barbenheimer.
a
We have
feature.
a Barbenheimer retake later on this month, but it starts with, you're right, Heretic, which is the film that Hugh Grant is starring in, horror title from A24, paired up against Best Christmas Pageant Ever. It's going to be a toss-up on which of these two win out this weekend. Of course, I think number one title is going to be Venom: The Last Dance in its third frame, even though that hasn't been performing at the level that other Venom movies have. The third and final installment of that Venom franchise has performed well enough to retain the crown we expect atop the box office this coming weekend. But yeah, between Heretic and Best Christmas Pageant Ever, we'll have to see. As I mentioned, Best Christmas Pageant comes in with a number of early screening efforts that happened leading up to this weekend's release. Heretic has had screenings on and off. What have you guys been hearing about this movie? Because this seems like one of these late career star-driven efforts that gets you excited to see a movie.
I mean, I know that one of the press screenings, there was a hook where there's a scene where the scent of blueberry muffins becomes very important, and they were like, we're going to have a little bit of a smell-o-vision situation. I don't know if it's like a megalopolis sort of thing where, like, some of the general screenings will have that extra little theatrical bump to it, but I'm in favor of anything smell-o-vision. But yeah, it's tough because, horror movies tend to really do amazing in September or October, obviously the lead up to Halloween, and then things kind of shift. I mean, releasing a horror movie in the week or two after Halloween, it feels bold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels like, hey, I don't know if you guys saw the calendar earlier. And Christmas usually works, I think. The first Scream movie came out in Christmas. You've got Nosferatu coming up this Christmas as well. I think it's just the timing in the schedule where this made most sense. Wait and see, in my perspective, on where Heretic plays out in terms of me going to the theaters to catch it. It is like award screener season, so I think we're all trying to catch up with as much as possible.
And this one does look like, I mean, it's to two Mormon missionaries knock on the door. It's Hugh Grant, and surprise, he has some nefarious things going on. It looks like it's a movie mostly like three people in a house, so I cannot imagine its production budget was particularly high. It feels like a nice little chamber piece to me. But yeah, I'll also be excited to kind of hear from people who I know and whose opinions I trust, whether it's worth heading out to see in theaters.
Yeah, I've been hearing some. Yeah, I think so. I've heard some good buzz about it, mostly around Hugh Grant's performance. Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know if you guys have ever looked at A24 has a shop that always has really interesting items. They've already got that candle on there.
Is it $80?
Probably.
Well, they do price things, I think, on the higher end.
Yeah.
That coming from a man like myself that bought the 4K director's cut of Midsommar from the A24 shop for what I felt was an obscene amount of money. But that is neither here nor there. That is supposed to open between 8 to 12 million, according to our forecasting panel. Really, that's been the range that these sort of horror movies have opened up this year, with a couple of exceptions, of course. We're not really expecting Heretic to break the mold of some of these horror movies in 2024. Let's move on to mid-November here, a title that I think attracted a lot of attention before people actually started seeing footage from it. Then it started attracting a little bit of concern. From Amazon MGM, we've got Red One, which is a Christmas-themed action comedy. Again, coming in before Thanksgiving. Is that the best timing for it? Who knows? But word of mouth on this one has been, let's put it kindly, not the best.
I mean, the association I have with it is, and I've completely forgotten the name of it. So Dwayne Johnson stars in Red One as the North Pole's head security guy. He was in some big action movie, Netflix, that came out shortly after the pandemic.
It's very straight to streaming-ish. It looks like a paycheck instead of a movie, honestly. Yeah. The poster looks like one of those fake posters that like you see in movies about movies.
Like Scott Pilgrim, the Lucas Lee.
Yeah. Will this movie exist in real life? Who knows, but at least it's existing in theaters. We do have to say that. That wasn't a guarantee, especially with Amazon behind the title. This is planned for a wide theatrical release, but right now, you know, our forecasting on this title has gone up and down. I think there's a little bit of reticence to commit to a high number on this, because I think people can sniff out the flop sweat. Now, we're all hoping that's wrong, but there are red flags with Red One. We're looking at a opening weekend range of 20 to 40 million, but that might improve as we get closer to release. So don't forget to check our updated tracking over at our website, boxofficepro.com. Our final box office forecast for any of these titles will always be released the Wednesday before they come out in theaters. So that is going to be November 13th for this title. But this early on, this is in flux. It really can go either way. It's a coin flip. And then, guys, the good news starts as we get into November 22nd in what is going to be let's say a precursor to what we expect to be one of the best Thanksgiving box offices of all time. The closest thing we've gotten since Barbenheimer to a double bill, we've got Paramount coming in with Gladiator II, the long-awaited sequel from Ridley Scott. That currently has tracking between $60 to $80 million for opening weekend. And then the tracking on this one has just shot up ever since the pre-sales started. Wicked Part 1 from Universal, again, a very wide range. It'll get a lot narrower as we get closer to release, but we just can't really identify what the ceiling for opening range for this one is. Wicked Part 1 right now comfortably looks like $100 million plus opening weekend.
And not in a Joker 2 way where...
No, yeah, where the awareness was high and we didn't really, you know, again, our numbers, our first forecast for Joker 2 came out before we really had the pre-sales in. And as soon as the pre-sales came in, we're like, wait a minute, this is going way different. No, that's not the case here for Wicked Part 1. We do have very strong pre-sales being reported to us by exhibitors nationwide, really. Small and large, a really good indication of where this could perform. The ceiling that we currently have at it is 140 million. That can go up or down. But right now, I think thinking around the 120 range for opening weekend probably isn't out of sight.
Universal's done a great job of making this feel like an event, like an event movie. I mean, it's something that any theater kids in the family would like to go to, or any kids who want something a little fun. And then you have Gladiator II, which I think, Daniel, you rightly pegged it a few weeks back as like the ultimate dad movie. That's a good subgenre pairing for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And, I felt this way last fall when Napoleon came out, let's say disappointing numbers, but I don't think they were bad numbers. It's just maybe people expected Napoleon to do a little bit better considering everything behind it. As I was watching and I was thinking, this movie isn't Gladiator 2. Napoleon is going to perform very different than something like Gladiator 2. I think those expectations that we had for Napoleon last year are more in line with this title, Gladiator 2, same director, Ridley's coming in with what is really going to be the dad movie of the holidays. Once again, that's a $60 to $80 million opening weekend range for the Paramount title. Now, we've got two movies here coming out the same weekend. As I mentioned before, we haven't had that since Barbenheimer. Chad, you had brought up some interesting data points from Fandango before we started recording in terms of people that are going to be watching both of these films.
Yeah, so Fandango just released their most anticipated holiday movies survey. And according to that, 65% of moviegoers they surveyed are interested in seeing both Wicked and Gladiator 2 as a double feature. Now, when Barbie and Oppenheimer came out and they did the same survey, 62% of moviegoers said they were interested in that double feature.
Chad, as someone who's, who likes Wicked, is a fan of the original stage show and has been looking forward to the movie now for quite some time. Have you put thought into like what format you're gonna see it in, or like an IMAX or a Dolby?
Yeah.
What's gonna be the debut experience for you?
Man, well, I think I'll probably end up going to a press screening, so hopefully it's
whatever you get. But
yeah, whatever I get. But I could see myself going back to either IMAX or Dolby. Probably see it more than once because I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, I mean, book your PLF tickets now.
Now,
it's going to be one of
that's
those
true.
that if you wait till weekend of your.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling, guys, especially with where in the calendar both of these movies are being released, I do feel that both these titles might open on the lower end of our forecasting range and then just carry through a little bit stronger after that opening weekend because of the ramp up into the Thanksgiving holiday. So I think a lot of folks are maybe planning to make this their Thanksgiving movie instead of their weekend before Thanksgiving movie. So watch out for that. Even if you have a number that seems low based on the ranges that we're giving, the real story of how these two movies perform is going to come after that Thanksgiving holiday weekend.
Yeah, I mean, musicals, I think more than any other genre, the opening weekend is definitely not the whole picture. You see movies like The Greatest Showman, for example, something that is maybe labeled a flop initially and then just grows and grows and grows. And I mean, I'm not to say that the trajectory for Wicked Part 1 is going to be the same, but I almost forget sometimes that these two movies aren't coming out on Thanksgiving. It seems like such a Thanksgiving sort of thing. But for Thanksgiving, we do have another huge movie that Daniel, you mentioned, was doing very well in pre-sales as well.
Yeah, from Walt Disney Animation, we've got Moana 2 that started its pre-sales period last week. And right now, because this movie is coming out on Wednesday, November 27th, the day before Thanksgiving, we are looking at a holiday weekend range of 5 days between 120 to $150 million. That may go up because, again, we've only had 1 week of pre-sales data on Moana 2. But so far, the pre-sales really look to be like the year's strongest. Chad, we also got a press release on Fandango here that they're reporting great traction on this title.
Fandango announced that Moana 2 is the best first-day ticket pre-seller for an animated film released in 2024. So that's ahead of Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, and Kung Fu Panda 4.
Fantastic news here for Walt Disney Animation Studios division that really hasn't had the best luck at the box office as of late, especially in the post-pandemic period. Thanksgiving releases have not been a guarantee for Disney.
Yeah, they've been
Right,
on a cold streak, and it really feels like this is going to be a return to form. If you have a Walt Disney Animation film coming out on Thanksgiving weekend that is a sequel to another popular Disney
Mhm.
film that also came out on Thanksgiving weekend, historically, those tend to do gangbusters. They certainly tend to outgross, like Frozen 2 have outgrossed Frozen. Pretty much all these animated sequels from Disney outgrossed their predecessors. So granted, Moana was not a huge earner when it came out in 16, but this one's definitely looking good.
I
It
think Moana's
grew.
grown in prominence. Yeah. I think
Yeah,
Disney
that's what I was
Plus
gonna
has really
say.
helped.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids that are really big Moana fans. My one concern with this is that it didn't start its life initially as a theatrical
Yeah.
release. It was originally that Disney Plus series.
And if you read the log line, it's basically like Moana has further adventures. Like it looks like it's a TV series that
Just
they
strung together into a feature.
awkwardly like where's your arc? But that said, I don't think it matters
That's a
to the
good
box
concern.
office that much.
No, that's a
Yeah, yeah,
legit concern,
yeah.
guys. I think that's fair. I will say that it might be a situation where Disney saw an opportunity in a release
Mhm.
date that they've struggled with in the past. And yeah, I mean, if we want to read it cynically, which isn't always the wrong reading in this industry, you could say, hey, let's patch together this animated series and roll the dice. The other end of the coin here might be the opposite, Rebecca. It might be a situation where they look at the early plans for this animated series, say, hey, we've really got something here. Let's not forget that the renaissance in the Disney sequels started with Toy Story 2, where the same thing happened. Toy
Mm,
Story 2 was going to
mhm.
be like the Return of Jafar or The Lion King 2, movies that actually are real and exist that went direct to video. Toy Story 2 was going to be direct to video afterthought
Yeah.
until
Yeah,
they went like, hey, wait a minute, we've got something special here. It
yeah.
might be the case with Moana
Yeah,
2.
I mean,
we can't
that's
complain about Disney taking a property that was going to go straight to streaming and give it to cinemas to play on the big screen. I mean, I feel like Disney definitely caught some flack for their treatment of animated films over the past few years, and some day and date release stuff there. And yeah, this feels like it's going to be a big deal.
That range that we have right now between 120 to 150 million on the 5-day basis, we're definitely going to be updating that in the coming weeks as we get more and more pre-sales data. But we already saw what happened earlier this year with Disney sequel in a release date that hasn't worked in the post-pandemic era for the
mm,
studio. Inside Out 2 came in mid-June, a date that had not worked at all for Pixar titles, and delivered and then so, right?
Delivered to the point of highest grossing animated movie of all time
Yeah,
delivered.
yeah. I
Like
mean,
yeah,
it
yeah.
really fantastic results. I think we might see another huge hit like that with Moana 2. The potential's there. So I do want to keep a close eye on that and really keep tabs on it as we get closer to release. The musical aspect of this Thanksgiving, because of course, songs are a huge part of an animated sequel like Moana. They're going to be the driving force behind Wicked Part 1. I think it's important to look at because musicals have been criticized a lot lately because of the performance at the box office. Of course, the latest example would be the Joker sequel. Yes, was a musical. Was it a movie? It's another debate entirely. But when they perform well, I think, as Rebecca notes, opening weekend tells a very small story.
Mhm.
Wonka, for example, last holiday season. That was a holiday movie that didn't really feel like the big holiday movie. Opened to $39 million. Didn't make any headlines for that opening weekend. Legged out to 218 million domestic. Guys, that's over 5 times its opening weekend. That's a fantastic multiplier. And if we can get something like that for a $100 million opening weekend for Wicked, we're talking about a $500 million movie in
Mm.
this late November period. And Moana 2, I think we have to talk about in the same regard. This could be back-to-back releases from different studios around Thanksgiving on movies that have real $500 million plus potential in the domestic market. We can't say that loud enough right now that we have 3 bad weekends ahead of
Mhm.
us. This can be a great ending to the year, even if that December box office doesn't have a quote unquote huge hit
Looking
Right,
at December, we have Sonic the Hedgehog 3. I mean, I feel like the first two were really, really strong films. It's a family title around the holidays. I mean, Nosferatu definitely is hitting in marketing among the more film nerd type audience. But I think even beyond that, too. I mean, I think our December is shaping up to look pretty well as well. We have, Mufasa the Lion King. There's some.
That's going to be the one, I
Yeah.
think, that gets us closer to 8.5 billion plus domestically. How well Mufasa can open, because again, when we talk about the December slate, those movies have a week, maybe two, in the 2024 box office to really make an impact, and everything else just carries over to next
I mean,
year.
Mufasa
which
and
will
Sonic
make
come out on the same day. That was.
and Sonic, I'm hearing good things about. We had the first Sonic finish its run just under 150 million. I think the second one just under 200 million. So this one might end up between 150 and 200, which would be nice. How much of that is going to be in the 2024 coffers versus 25? It all works out at the end. But Mufasa is going to be the real question mark. If that can be another big hit coming in late December, at that point, both Moana 2 and Wicked have been in theaters for 3 to 4 weeks. It's going to be finishing the year on a hot streak. But it does depend on that strong finish. Mufasa has to play a role. I think Sonic is definitely going to perform in that last little bit of 24 that we have left. Whether Mufasa does or not is the question mark. I had doubts about that title until we showed up to CinemaCon, and director Barry Jenkins, with very little footage behind it that was ready, came out and gave, I think, a very honest assessment of why he would sign on to make a movie like this. And that sold me.
But I keep thinking we saw Barry Jenkins essentially, explain or the personal elements behind him wanting to make this movie. That's not something that I doubt Disney is going to put Barry Jenkins front and center in the marketing campaign.
That's right. You need those animated lions to sell the movie. We'll see. That's why I think that's the big question mark on how the year ends up. But the hot streak in earnest begins November 22nd with Gladiator II and Wicked Part 1. And you know what? I don't want to discount Red One. I mean, we might be pleasantly surprised with a stronger than usual opening weekend. I like to think of it the way we look at June of this year, where, of course, all the headlines go to Inside Out 2. But the weekend prior to that, Bad Boys Ride or Die pretty much reignited that moribund box office and really revitalized things. If Red One can do that, things are going to be fantastic. It doesn't need to do that, but because again, I think Red One is really veering close to being a fiasco, or we could be totally wrong and it'd be a welcome hit. You know which side of those two coins I'm rooting for. I think obviously we all want it to be a huge hit, but it's such a big question mark. And now to finish up this episode with the movies that we're most looking forward to personally, because of course we have interests that go beyond the wide release films or the films that are going to make an impact in the exhibition sector of our industry. Let's go over some of these titles, guys. I know, Chad, you're going to be catching up with a lot of December titles at the Denver Film Festival. Rebecca, on your end, what are the November releases that we haven't discussed that you really want to catch?
I'm excited to see Queer from Luca Guadagnino. He's a filmmaker whose films have kind of been hit or miss for me. It took me by surprise how much I really liked Challengers and how fun it was, how good a theatrical watch it was. I kind of just made a spur-of-the-moment decision to go in and see it. So if Luca can pull off two of my favorite 2024 movies, that would be a pretty interesting thing.
It's either small romantic dramas or gory body horror-ish horror movies. And I like the horror movies he's made quite a bit. The Suspiria remake I still defend. And I really liked Bones and All. The one where Chalamet eats people.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. On my end, we've got a movie that came out, I think, last week, but don't ask its distributor if it came out because they sure didn't tell us or anybody else. Clint Eastwood's latest film, probably his final film, Juror Number 2, supposedly released by Warner Brothers. Again, they didn't report box office. I'm not sure even what the location count was of this title.
It feels like it was single digits, potentially.
Maybe. We don't know. We literally don't know because they chose A, to not promote it, and B, not to release it to enough theaters for you to make an impact for anyone, which is entirely unfortunate. I'm a big fan of Clint Eastwood's late era films, even his smaller, weirder movies. I've always found interesting. I cannot wait to see Juror Number 2, but I don't know how, where, or when I'll see it. I just know it was supposed to be released last weekend, but again, beats me if it did. And I'm not sure anyone in that Warner Brothers building would know either with the attention they gave it. It's incredibly disappointing to see a filmmaker like this go out in this capacity. So I am very much looking forward to seeing the film when I put in the time and effort to find it. Crazy to say that sentence, but unfortunately, that's the industry we're in these days. Hopefully, we are on the dawn of a new era for this industry. As we mentioned, we expect the box office to heat up in a serious way starting on November 22nd and really pushing us through January of a 2025 that is going to be, I think, comfortably a $9 billion plus year on the domestic side. I think the ceiling, looking at the forecast that we have right now from a forecasting panel, there is an outside shot that we get to that $10 billion mark in 2025, the first time that we've had that benchmark in the post-pandemic era. And I genuinely do believe that 2025 is going to be the best year since that 2020 hit bottom moment that we've had. And I know we've said this many times, but after we've seen the performance that we saw over the summer and we look at how this slate can finish out the end of the year, I do think we're on the precipice of something special in this industry. And I'm excited to cover that with you guys in the coming weeks and months, not only through this podcast available every Thursday, but also through our print magazine, Box Office Pro, and our website, boxofficepro.com. If you like what we do, don't forget to subscribe to the magazine, which we also have. You can find that on our website. On behalf of Chad, Rebecca, and myself, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.